Don't confess to crimes on rap lyrics if you do not want them used, or at least get out of my county.
Overnight, pretty much, the prosecutor at the heart of this case became one of the most well-known lawyers in the country.
This isn't Fani Willis's first rodeo.
Her office says their conviction rate hovers around 90%.
I think he is about to mess around and find out exactly who Fani Taifa Willis is.
The chair of the House Judiciary Committee says to her, I'm worried about potential political motivations. You had launched a re-election campaign. You were talking about prosecuting Donald Trump. Well, she fired back.
I cannot stand a bully, and I can't stand people that hurt other people.
An arrest warrant has now been issued for one person accused of sending racist messages to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis.
This job and women in general standing into these positions to threaten me is a waste of time. It's a complete waste of their time.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to the Washington Post. I'm Amy Gardner. I'm a national reporter covering voting issues and election interference criminal cases. And I would like to say welcome to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Welcome to the Washington Post.
Thank you so much. It's a true honor to be here. Many people know I am from the Washington, D.C. area, so I grew up reading the Washington Post. In fact, my dad would make me do current event stories out of articles in the Washington Post. So let's just say this is a full circle moment. It's a real honor that of all the great names you have here, not today only, but also last year, that I would be included in that. So thank you for having me.
And in fact, your staff was so excited about this that there had to be a little bit of a lottery to come with you today. Is that correct?
We don't do lotteries. But what we do is I opened up an essay. We knew, just due to budget reasons, I thought that this would be a great opportunity for people that were interested in leadership in my office to tell me why they were interested in leadership, why they thought a conference such as this they would be able to learn from. We had more than 30 entries, and they wrote their personal stories that were phenomenal, not just where they've been, but where they see themselves going. And I have 10 members of my staff that won that essay contest, and they are here with me today.
So let's talk about RICO.
Let's talk about it.
You built a record using Georgia's anti-racketeering law extensively, and people know it for prosecuting gangs and mafia, and you're making history using it to try to prosecute a former president of the United States. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for you to tell us if there were one thing that you would like the public to understand about RICO, what would it be?
What I would want the public to understand is that what I have found, I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years now, and most of that time has been as a criminal prosecutor. I personally have tried well in excess of 100 cases, and what I have learned in my experience as an attorney is that juries are very, very smart, and they want to know the entire story. And what RICO does is let you tell the entire story. It lets you tell about every member that joined a criminal enterprise. And so I am known for bringing a large RICO indictment against the Atlanta Public Schools, where we indicted 35 people, and that is really where I really learned RICO. And so when I was elected the district attorney of Fulton County, one thing I did was have my staff trained on this statute, how it could be used, when it is appropriate to use. And so currently in my office, we have 11 indicted RICO cases. I'm investigating 3 more. And we've used it from everything from white-collar crime to human trafficking to gangs to any time someone has joined a criminal enterprise.
On to the news. Last night, my colleague Holly Bailey and I published excerpts from video statements made by 4 of the defendants in the Fulton case who have pleaded guilty. was it a surprise to you that those videos got out? And also, it might not be a bad thing for you to explain to the public, what is a proffer statement?
So my team in the particular case that those got out, we had already filed to have a protective order where discovery in the case would not get out. So surprising, no. Disappointing, yes. In fact, today from here, I made sure I wasn't late for this event, but I was with my team making sure that an emergency motion got filed so that that motion we had already filed gets heard immediately, because I think I'm not happy that it was released and that you and your colleague got to do your story. But that...
We don't always agree.
That's okay. But that being said, I think that it is important for people to understand in general, and so we'll do it in the context of Atlanta Public Schools. In Atlanta Public Schools, we indicted 35 people, and they were everyone from the superintendent to section superintendents to principals to teachers, because all of them had played a part in this criminal enterprise. And of those, 20 pled, more than 20, 21, 22 of them pled, and as each one of them pled, they made a proffer. And so what was important about that proffer is I think it's important when a defendant pleads. One of the reasons that prosecutors will give a less sentence when someone pleads is because it's very important that you take responsibility for what you did, right? So there is that, I took responsibility for it. But you also then have to admit and confess as to what you did, what was your part, and who did you do it with. And so...
And it leads you up the ladder in some cases.
It often leads you all the way up the ladder, and it tells
all the way up the ladder.
All the way. I want to get to the top of the ladder. The DA in Fulton County always want to get to the top of the ladder. So it leads you all the way to the top of the ladder, making sure that everyone that is involved in the criminal enterprise is held responsible. So often in criminal cases, you will see, what people would think of, as you said, commonly, the street boys that are selling the dope. But who is running those young men that are selling the dope? And so if you use RICO, you can often get the whole chain and not just hold the people at the bottom responsible.
One of the most common criticisms that you hear about this big case on election interference in Fulton County is how sprawling it is. Here in Washington, Special Counsel Jack Smith, his election interference investigation has a single defendant, Donald Trump. Yours has originally had 19, 41 criminal counts, 98 pages. Our own columnist Ruth Marcus asked the question in an opinion column in August when the indictment came. Is this one too many? Can you address concerns that this case is so sprawling that it's going to be difficult to see to the end?
Well, I won't answer anything about this case specifically. As you know, I won't answer anything about any open case that my office is prosecuting. But I think that's an uninformed opinion. In my office, as I told you, we have many RICO indictments. I certainly have RICO indictments that are bigger than 19. I think I have 2 with 28 defendants right now. We are capable of doing it. In Atlanta Public Schools, I was the lead prosecutor. I put 12 people at the table. The jury was able to decipher that evidence. They were able to make decisions. 11 of those people were found guilty. 1 was acquitted, which lets you know that the jury was able to look at each individual's responsibility and hold them responsible. And so I don't think that 28 or 35 or 19 or 8 that's who got involved in the criminal enterprise. They deserve to be charged. In fact, they earned it.
I want to switch over and talk a little bit more about the personal side of your life. You talk a lot about your dad. You mentioned at the top, growing up here, your dad raised you, a prominent lawyer here in DC. I kind of think it's fair to say that you had a girl dad before that became a hashtag.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what was so special about that relationship and how it shaped who you are today as a lawyer, as a parent, as a person.
So the first thing is I want people to notice that chain because I was a latchkey kid. Because my daddy was a lawyer. He used to say everybody in the neighborhood had a key to our house because I kept losing the keys. That being said, he is my foundation. One of the things that people know or don't know is my father was a Black Panther. And so he tells me when he was time for him to take the bar that one of the questions they ask you is, have you ever been arrested? And that he had been arrested so many times in so many different states that all he could do was list the states that he had been arrested in. He didn't know all of the times that he had been arrested. Some people think that that is like some symbol of hate, but it is not. What he often tells me is that the reason that he went to law school was when they would get arrested for protesting and doing other things, it was always white lawyers that came and defended them and made sure that they got out of jail and that they were able to carry on with their lives. And that is what brought his interest into into being a lawyer. He never talked about the people that did ugly and awful things to him. Obviously, I know the stories. I know the story of him being arrested in Louisiana for being an inn on a sunny day. I know that story, but it's never about the hate of the person that did that, but rather the lawyer that came to defend him. And so what he has taught me from a very, very small child is that everyone is entitled to some dignity, and that when I am looking at cases and anyone that should report to me, that it is important that we know that everyone involved in that scenario, the person that is charged, the victim, the witness who's also victimized by seeing that crime, the law enforcement community that is in that case, all of them are entitled to dignity. And so as we approach cases in my jurisdiction, as long as I sit as a district attorney, that lesson of everyone being entitled to some dignity and everyone having value, it must carry through. I tell my staff often, you know, I'm not into firing people, but should I find out that you treated someone in a way that was disrespectful because they don't have your level of education or your socioeconomic status, it'll be your last day in my office.
Wow. We've talked also about being working moms, but you're also a working single mom, like your dad, single dad. And you've talked about how you're not sure you believe in the women can have it all approach to career. And I wonder if this room is filled with people who would love to hear your thoughts, especially younger women who are just starting out, on the sacrifices and the choices that you sometimes have to make.
So I do believe women can have it all, but what I don't believe is in this fantasy land that I find that some young people are living in. The reality is that success...
Could you be a little more direct, please?
Success comes at a price. And that's the reality, and success comes by earning it. You don't just get to be the high profile anything without earning it. And so, you know, I did raise 2 little girls on my own. They are the thing that I am the most proud of. They still stress me out, and I love them dearly, but the reality is, you know, I was a trial lawyer. Sometimes that meant I'm at the office 10, 11 o'clock at night. I always made sure I had a couch in my office because sometimes dinner was McDonald's and we slept on the couch. If that's what it required to do the job excellently, I would have loved to have been home or had a husband that was helping out, but I was divorced. That was a decision to make. It was hard, and it was not easy, and so this fantasy land that it's gonna be easy is not true. I remember when my babies were young, I brought them to court with me one day, and one of them wrote on a judge's table, because I had them in the back with like ink that wouldn't erase, you know, because mommy's gotta be in court to do the job, and they 6 years old, and so there's sacrifices that come. And work-life balance, the law is probably not the profession you want to go in. The law is a jealous mistress. And to be excellent at it, she requires some time.
Newspapers, too. What would your daughter say to that answer that you just gave, do you think?
I'll tell you a funny story about one of my daughters. So recently, my youngest daughter decided that she was going to switch college. So I know about college, I've been. I gave her some advice that I did not think that was a wise decision, and I didn't think it was a wise decision because you're going to lose credits. When you go from one college to the other, you're gonna make this trip longer, you're gonna cost me more money. So I did not want her to do that, but she insisted, and so we had a conversation about, okay, well, decisions come with consequences, but you're 20-something years old, so let's make this decision. So she makes a decision. She tells me she's talked to the counselor. I know she ain't talked to the counselor. She wants to do what she wants to do. So she gets to the school, and she's there about 7 weeks, and she goes and has this conversation with the counselor, and the counselor tells her, you're going to lose 40 credits. So now she calls me and she's hysterical, she's crying, and I'm calm. We already had this conversation. So I'm on the phone and I'm listening to her. All I'm doing is calculating how many more months of rent I got to pay. But otherwise, I'm really calm listening to her. And I said, you know, we had a conversation about consequences, and this is the consequence you have to pay for your decision. And she told me, you have zero emotional intelligence.
Wow.
So I guess that's what she would say.
Wow. Wow. Okay, well, this is a segue from family back to the job. What's it like to receive so many threats? Not just you, but your family. Do you take them seriously? How seriously? Did you expect it?
I knew when I was making the endeavor into several cases that those cases were against high-profile individuals. And there is this reality. There's one thing that I find very sad. I am praised a lot for the work that I'm doing, and I thank people for that praise. But it's really, we're at a sad place in society when people do not expect Lady Justice to be blind and that she will do her job. And so it is, everyone should be protected by the law, but everyone is also held accountable in the law. And so I understood when I was making these endeavors that I would be threatened. Did I know in a matter of a couple of months there'd be 100 and something threats? No. Did I suspect that when the threats came, so many of them, the nature of them would be so racist, and that this country still had that much kind of venom for just the fact that I was a black woman? In the last 3 years, I've been called the N-word so many times, I couldn't even think to count,
well, and then
how many times.
And there's a new euphemism out there for you, isn't there?
Many of them.
The election rigor?
Yeah, I have heard that, and so many other things that are just very, very ugly things.
Yep.
And it is sad that we are at that place in society. It is sad that people think that threatening me or anyone around me is going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. We're going to keep doing business as usual. But I have definitely made changes to the way I live my life. That is hard. You know, I can't just go out with my girlfriends and have a drink tonight or any night because I have to have so much security so much of the time. So I'm
but
human.
You still make it to
difficult.
courtside at the NBA game sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, but luckily my dignitary team thinks that's a perk.
Okay. If you were speaking to a room full of people who criticize you for being a liberal Democrat, who is making prosecutorial decisions purely based on politics, what would you try to say to them to convince them otherwise? And I think this is an opportunity for you to talk about your sort of philosophy about the law and democracy.
One, I think if anyone checked my record, they would just find that that's completely inaccurate. I used to tell my campaign manager that I'm nobody's candidate, nobody's prosecutor. And the reason I said that, and I'm attacked from both the left and the right, is because I do believe everyone should be held accountable. I do believe if you just look at my office, I am a prosecutor's prosecutor. I will put you in jail for life and have a real good night's sleep about it. If you have hurt someone in my community, if you've decided that you are the one that should take someone's life. But also, if you look at my office, I think the only office in the United States where I run a year-long program in the classroom where we're teaching children other ways to do things. I also have one of the leading conviction integrity units where we're looking at old sentences and making sure that they're fair. I also have just paired up with Morehouse Medicine, where we're going to look at mental health and how that played in and giving people a second chance in that way. And so I am a holistic prosecutor, one that does not mind prosecuting people and making sure that they are held accountable, but also does not mind where it is appropriate having people sent to diversion programs. The reality is this: people have to believe in their criminal justice system. And so it's sad that people think that when you prosecute people that they idolized or that they think are somehow special, all of a sudden they would like to put these names on you. But the reality is, if you don't want to be prosecuted for a crime in Fulton County, don't come in my county and commit one.
Okay, this is also perilously close to the case at hand, but I'm going to do it. Speaking of special counsel Jack Smith here in D.C., you have said publicly in the past that there has not been any meaningful contact between your two offices. Is that still true?
So I'm not going to comment on that question or other questions about an open case. And I think this is a good educational place so people can understand why prosecutors, because they get frustrated with prosecutors that we do not comment on cases. If I was to comment on any open case, it would be a reason to conflict my office off. And it's really inappropriate because I don't want to impugn the rights of victims, and there are real victims in the cases that you may inquire about. I don't want to impugn on the rights of defendants. And so it would be irresponsible of me, and I'm not going to do that.
That reminds me, you were willing to talk about the motion that you filed earlier today seeking to expedite the motion to put the discovery under seal. I don't think you said this exactly, but can you say definitively to this audience and the internet audience that it was not your office that leaked those videos?
It was absolutely not my office. You know,
I just want to get that on the
open records requests we got for that, and you know, told
from
reporter,
us.
Yes, from you and every other outlet. No, we're not going to release information, which is why so long ago we filed that motion already, and now we're just asking that the judge rule on it, expedite it, and I would talk about that because that's a public record. It's stamped, filed. You have a copy of it. I think it's already on Twitter.
We have a story online about it already.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, this is something that I'm hoping you are willing to talk about a little bit. When do you think this election interference case will come to a conclusion? And let me add a little bit of detail before you answer. You have said March in the past. And there are a couple of other cases out there that make that less feasible, to my mind. I don't know anything, but that's just what it seems like. It can't be March. Can you give us any clue when this would wrap up?
I mean, I think a case will be on appeals for years.
Okay.
But I think that in terms of, I believe in that case there will be a trial. I believe the trial will take many months, and I don't expect that we will conclude until the winter or the very early part of 2025.
So there's a possibility that defendants would be on trial up to, including an election season, an election day, and maybe even an inauguration day?
I don't, when making decisions about cases to bring, consider an election cycle or an election season. It does not go in the calculus. What goes in the calculus is, this is the law, these are the facts, and if the facts show you violated the law, then charges are brought. I have heard that kind of what you're hinting at and going around. It would be a really sad...
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know either. But it would be a really sad country, and if I can get people to think about this logically, there's probably right now in the country, through all the prosecutor's offices, 1 million people right now under investigation, from everything from theft by shoplifting to entering an auto to murder. It would be a really sad day if, when you're under investigation for this shoplifting charge, you could go run for city council and then the investigation would stop. That's foolishness, and it's foolishness at any level.
And speaking more broadly about RICO cases generally, because you have so much experience prosecuting these, can the public get a sense or an expectation of how many, what the possibility is for how many of the original 19 defendants of a case, hypothetically speaking, might get plea deals, and how many would be left to actually face a trial? And let's not talk about the election interference case, but when you're talking about, say, the Atlanta Public Schools case with the 30-plus original defendants, how many ultimately went to trial, and can it get all the way down to one?
So in the Atlanta Public Schools, I think that's a great case to talk about and use as an example because that's closed. There were 35 defendants charged. 2 of them unfortunately passed away, so that took us to 33 defendants. 12 of them went to trial, and the rest all to plea deals.
Okay, we are close to the end here. I want to ask you one final question, really for this audience, which is what advice would you give to young women who are trying to be heard and make a difference and have their voices heard?
Well, that you can do anything, that you should not in any way limit yourself. You should not think that this is a job that a man can do better. In fact, I think there are some innate skills in managing and leadership that women are really good at. I think mothering helps us with that. I can tell you a scenario. Recently, an employee did something against what I told them to do, and I had 3 men in there advising me, fire them today, fire them, fire them, fire them. And I decided to use another course that had discipline and redirection. And I think it is important that you do feed into your staff and you try to build them. Don't get me wrong, I will hold someone accountable, and I'm more than strong enough to make hard decisions. But I don't think that sometimes our skills and the way that we react to things, people will try to make that you are less than because of that. I would tell you that that's a secret power. Don't dim that light because you were female. Right? Don't dim that light or think that your approach is the wrong approach. You should be very much authentically you, like you always get Fani. I don't change no matter what room I'm in. And you should be comfortable enough in your own skin to be authentically you, to be a woman. It's okay to be pretty. It's okay to, think of things that are feminine things and still be a strong leader.
What a wonderful place to end this. Thank you so much. It has been a joy. Thank you so much for joining us, D.A. Willis. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.